The Last Night, page 175. After supper, I went outside. It was late July, still light at 7 o'clock, one of those summer days that felt like it would go on forever, except I knew it would end. There was no way around it. Tomorrow we'd get in the car and start driving west toward Chicago. In the clearing, I walked under the tripods that Jimmy designed and we built 2 years ago. What would the people who were buying our house do with these gangly wooden structures? Leave them? Tear them down? It made me sad to think about it. I spotted a cluster of lady slippers. I thought of these wildflowers as royalty, the queens of the plant world. They were endangered. You could get a $50 fine for digging one up. I always felt rich with those expensive ladies growing wild in our woods. Until now. I wished Andy would come outside. He'd been staying away for the past few days. So would Larry and Steve. I needed to talk to those guys. I missed them a lot, and I hadn't even left yet. That night I laid in bed, hearing the songs of the crickets and feeling miserable. The door opened. Dad walked in. When we saw that Jimmy was asleep, he came and sat on my bed. "Can't sleep?" he asked softly. "Nope." "A lot's going on. Tomorrow's the big day." I turned toward the wall. "I know this has been hard for you." He put his hand on my shoulder. "But you'll see, Ralph, it's going to be all right." For a crazy second, I imagined him saying, "I changed my mind. We're not going to move." Of course, that didn't happen. But what did was just as amazing. He leaned down and kissed me on the forehead, something he hadn't done since I was a little kid. That night, I had a dream about Great-Grandma. She died a few years ago, but in the dream, she was in the backyard wearing her favorite gray sweatshirt, and I was there too. We were standing beside the garden at the spot where I once saw her plant some of her teeth. "It didn't work," I said. "Look, nothing ever grew here." "That's not true," she said. "Look at your arms and those 2 long legs. Something did grow in this place. That something is you." And that made me feel better. Funeral, page 179. On our last morning in Marshfield, the doorbell rang at 9 o'clock. When I opened it, I saw Andy, Steve, and Larry standing together. I was surprised to see them. "Come on, we're taking you to the woods," Larry said. Dad came downstairs carrying 2 suitcases. "Can I go into the woods?" I asked Dad. He shook his head. "We're leaving in less than an hour." "Please, Dad. Just one last time?" "All right, but we're leaving at 10 o'clock sharp. When you hear me beep the horn, you come right away, okay?" "Okay," I promised, and followed my friends outside. They were walking in a funny way, the way you do when you're hiding a secret. "What's going on?" I asked. "We're having a funeral," Andy replied with a solemn face. "For who?" "You," Steve explained. "A funeral," I laughed. "Hey, I'm moving. I'm not dead." "You'll be dead to us," Larry pointed out. We entered Ailes Woods on a path I'd run down thousands of times. I knew every rock and mushroom and pine tree by heart. In the middle of the woods, my friends stopped. "There," Steve said, pointing to a small indentation in the forest floor. "Lie down, dead man." I lay down. The ground was thick with pine needles and soft. My friends picked up big clumps of pine needles and started sprinkling them over my body. "Hey!" I protested. "Be quiet," Larry ordered. "You're dead, remember? Keep your eyes closed." "Just don't get it on my face," I muttered. They kept sprinkling the pine needles on me until my limbs and body were covered, and I could feel them, like a lightweight blanket. "Should odd acquaintance be forgot," Steve sang. "You don't sing that at a funeral," Larry interrupted. "You sing that on New Year's Eve." And Andy loudly cleared his throat. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye," he announced. "We have gathered here to lay to rest the soul of our departed friend, Ralph Fletcher. Would anyone like to speak?" "I would," Steve said. "Ralph Fletcher was a good friend. Last year I had to do summer school. He came by every day to walk me home." "He was a good friend," Larry agreed. "About a month ago, John Berkowitz tried to beat me up, and Ralph told John, 'You'll have to beat me up first.' So John Berkowitz punched him instead. He was a brave friend. Stupid, but brave." Everyone laughed, including me. "He was a good friend," Andy began, then stopped. I lay on the pine needles, eyes shut, smelling the mix of the piney smell and the good rotting earth underneath. I waited for Andy to continue, but he didn't say anything. Then he whispered, "He was the brother I never had." "He was a member of the Four Stooges," Larry said in a husky whisper. Then they all said together, "We'll never forget him." My eyes started to water. I tilted my head so they wouldn't notice and stayed quiet. Nobody spoke. I thought of all the things I'd done with these guys, staying up late listening to the radio while the DJ counted down the top 10, blowing off M80s in Mr. Oxner's cornfield, eating raw sweet corn, going to the Marshfield Fair every summer, arguing about which girl in our class was cuter, Lisa Kennedy, Pam Kanye, or Beth Byers. Fishing for crappies and sunfish, trading baseball cards, card tricks, dirty jokes, scars, stories, snacks, swears. For a long moment it stayed quiet. Finally, I opened my eyes. They were gone. Usually I hated it when my friends ditched me, but this time it felt different. In a strange way, I was glad they were gone. For a while, I just laid there looking up at the trees. I heard a car horn beeping. "Ralph!" It was Jimmy calling. "Come on, we gotta go." "Coming," I yelled back. I sat up and brushed off the pine needles. Bits of light danced in the deep forest shadows around me. I knew I'd never forget that place. Then I stood up and stepped into my new life, whatever that might be.